The late summer sun beat down on the dusty fairgrounds, painting everything in a haze of golden light. The air was a mix of sweet cotton candy, the earthy smell of animals, and the distant, tinny music of a carousel. A mother and her young daughter weaved through the crowds, their hands sticky from lemonade. They were there for the pie contest, the giant vegetables, and the simple joy of a day out. The little girl, let's call her Anya, was 8 years old, with eyes that noticed everything, especially animals. She had begged to walk past the pens of fluffy rabbits and bleating goats. That's how they found themselves near the big, open-sided auction barn, drawn by the rhythmic chant of the auctioneer and the restless sounds coming from within. Just for a minute, her mother Priya said. They found seats on a rough wooden bench at the back, watching as people bid on farm equipment and bundles of hay. Anya was only half interested until they brought out the dogs. These weren't puppies. They were working dogs, mostly German shepherds and Labradors, their postures alert and trained. The auctioneer explained they were from a well-known service dog organization. A few were being retired and were looking for good homes. But others, he said, were career change dogs. They hadn't made the cut. One by one, confident, strong dogs were led into the ring, fetching good bids from people who recognized their training. Then, a man led in a German shepherd named Titan. The difference was immediate. Where the other dogs stood proud, Titan's head was lowered. His steps were hesitant, not a march, but a shuffle. His coat, which should have been a rich black and tan, looked dull. But it was his eyes that caught Anya's attention. They weren't focused on the crowd. They darted around, wide and white-rimmed, seeing threats where there were none. When a truck backfired outside, the dog flinched so violently he almost slipped on the sawdust. The auctioneer's voice took on a slightly apologetic tone. Now, this here is Titan, 4 years old. Excellent pedigree, smart as a whip. Completed basic obedience, but, didn't suit the high-pressure service work. Needs a quiet, understanding home. A project for someone with experience. The words hung in the air. Problem dog. The bidding started low and moved slower. A few men at the front, who looked like they might run a kennel, threw out some offers. But they were low, more for his breed papers than for the trembling animal himself. The auctioneer tried to jazz it up. Come on, folks, look at that bone structure. He's just a little sensitive. Anya tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, she whispered, her voice tight. He's scared. Priya put an arm around her. I know, sweetheart, but he'll find a home. Someone here will know how to help him. But as the bid stalled, the kind of home he might find became a scary thought in Anya's mind. The men talking in low voices didn't look like they wanted to give hugs. They looked like they wanted a dog to guard a yard. Titan needed more than a yard. He needed someone to see past the shaking. Going once? The auctioneer called, his hammer raised. The final bid was a pittance. Anya's heart hammered in her own chest. It felt like watching someone being left behind. Without thinking, driven by a pure, desperate need to stop what was happening, she blurted out, Mama, please. Her mother looked down, seeing the real tears welling in her daughter's eyes. Priya was a practical woman. They lived in a small house. They had a budget. They were not dog people with experience. This was a terrible idea. Every sensible thought in her head screamed it. But then she looked at Titan. She saw the dog not as a failed product, but as a creature drowning in fear. And she saw her daughter, whose kindness was her greatest strength. In a split second, practicality lost. Priya's hand shot up just as the auctioneer opened his mouth to say, twice. I have $50. The auctioneer announced, pointing at her. A new bidder in the back. Do I hear 60? The men at the front shook their heads, muttering. No one else raised a hand. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Sold to the lady and the little girl in the back. A wave of silence, then murmurs, washed over their section of the crowd. People turned to look at them, their expressions a mix of curiosity and pity. Anya felt a rush of relief so strong it made her dizzy, followed immediately by a squirm of anxiety. What had they just done? As they walked to the side to complete the paperwork, the man who had led Titan in brought the dog over. Up close, he was even bigger, and the smell of his anxiety was sharp. He wouldn't make eye contact with Priya, and he shied away when Anya slowly reached out her hand. "He's a good dog," the man said, not unkindly, but his tone was flat. "Just broken. The program is intense." He couldn't handle the noise, the unpredictability. Started shutting down. "He's not sick, but he's not right." He handed the leash to Priya. The leather felt heavy and final. The drive home was quiet. Titan sat on a blanket in the back, panting heavily, drooling a little. He didn't look out the window. He just stared at the space between the front seats, trembling. Anya sat beside him, not touching him, just speaking in the soft, sing-song voice she used with her favorite stuffed animal when it was sad. "It's okay, Titan," she murmured. "You're with us now. We have a backyard with dandelions, and I have a secret spot under the willow tree. It's very quiet there." Priya watched them in the rearview mirror, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The glow of the fairgrounds faded behind them, replaced by the ordinary lights of their neighborhood. The adventure of the day was over. Now, the real work was beginning, and she had no idea if her impulsive act of love was the beginning of a beautiful story, or a very, very big mistake. The dog in the back seat, a bundle of noble breeding and shattered nerves, seemed to wonder the same thing. The first night was the worst. They had set up a cozy bed for Titan in the laundry room, with soft blankets, water, and a bowl of the good kibble the auction man had given them. But the moment they closed the door, a low, mournful whine began. It wasn't a bark. It was the sound of pure, lonely distress. It turned into a panicked scratching at the door. Priya opened it, and the big dog bolted out, not to run, but to press himself into the darkest corner of the living room, behind the big armchair. He flattened himself against the wall, trying to disappear. No amount of gentle coaxing could get him to come out. Anya, in her pajamas, sat on the floor a few feet away. "It's okay," she whispered again and again, like a lullaby. She didn't try to pet him. She just sat there, a small, calm presence in the dim light, until her mother insisted she go to bed. The next morning, the food and water in the laundry room were untouched. Titan was still a shadow behind the chair. This was more than shyness. This was a deep freeze. A visit to their local vet confirmed their fears. Dr. Sharma was a gentle woman with kind eyes. She examined the trembling Titan thoroughly. "Physically, he's underweight and dehydrated, but there's no major disease," she said, her brow furrowed. "This heart murmur I'm hearing, it's very slight. Often, that can be stress-induced. The real issue is here," she said, softly tapping her own temple. "This is severe anxiety, possibly a traumatic response to his training." Priya felt a sinking feeling. What do we do? Dr. Sharma gave them medication to help with the acute anxiety, but she was clear. Pills can take the edge off, but they won't rewrite his story. He needs to feel safe. He needs to learn that the world isn't a scary place. "And that," she said, looking from Priya's worried face to Anya's determined one, "is a lot of hard, patient work." They decided to rename him. Titan felt too heavy, too much pressure for a dog who just wanted to be small and safe. After much thought, Anya chose the name River. "Because rivers are calm," she explained, "and they find their own path." But River didn't find any path. For days, he was a ghost in their house. He would only move from one hiding spot to another when everyone was asleep. Priya found herself tiptoeing, speaking in hushed tones, feeling the weight of this creature's silent suffering. The bills for the vet and the special food started adding up. Doubt crept in, cold and persistent. She lay awake at night, listening for his quiet panting, wondering if she had been foolish. Had her good heart doomed them all to a house filled with this invisible tension? Anya, however, operated on a different frequency. She didn't see a problem to be solved. She saw a friend who was sad. Her approach was simple and relentless. She didn't force anything. She just included River in her quiet world. She would do her homework at the coffee table, chattering away about fractions or the planets, her voice a soft, steady stream. So Jupiter has a big red spot, River. It's a giant storm, bigger than our whole planet. But it's far away, so it can't hurt us. She would eat her after-school apple, deliberately taking loud, crunchy bites. See? It's just a noise. It's a good noise. It means apple. Her most powerful tool was reading. Every afternoon, she would fetch a book from her shelf, often a story about animals or adventures, and sit on the floor, not facing River's hiding spot, but near it. She would read aloud, her voice finding a rhythm in the words. She didn't look at him, didn't expect anything. She was just sharing her space and her story. For a week, nothing changed. River remained a statue of fear. Then, one rainy Thursday, everything shifted. Anya had a bad day at school. Some kids had been mean about a picture she drew. She came home feeling small and crumpled. She didn't even do her usual chatter. She just slumped on the floor near the armchair, a few silent tears slipping down her cheeks. She was so lost in her own hurt that she didn't notice the movement at first. A slow, tentative shuffle, the soft sound of nails on hardwood. Then she felt a warmth against her leg. She froze. River, for the first time, had left his fortress. He had crept out and now lay down, pressing his side gently against her. He wasn't looking at her. He was facing forward, as if guarding her. But he had come. He had chosen to be near her in her sadness. Anya didn't squeal or grab him. She slowly, so slowly, let her hand rest on the carpet, palm up, an invitation. Minutes passed, filled only with the sound of rain on the window. Then she felt the cool, damp touch of his nose as he sniffed her fingers. A moment later, the great, heavy weight of his head settled onto her open palm. A deep, shuddering sigh escaped River, a sigh that seemed to come from the very bottom of his soul. It was the sound of a long-held breath finally being let go. In that quiet moment, the dam of fear cracked. He wasn't cured. The world was still a big, loud, scary place. But he had found one safe harbor. And Anya, through her own tears, realized she had found one too. Their healing, they would soon understand, had just begun, and it would be a journey they took together. The touch of his head on her hand changed everything. It was as if a silent agreement had been signed in that quiet, rainy moment. River had decided to trust Anya, and with that decision, a door opened, not with a bang, but with a slow, gentle creak. He didn't suddenly become a normal, bounding dog. The anxiety was still there, a shadow he carried with him. A dropped pot lid would still send him scrambling under the table. The rumble of the garbage truck on Tuesday mornings meant he would press himself against Anya's side, trembling. But now, instead of hiding alone in a dark corner, he sought her out. He began to follow her from room to room, a quiet four-legged shadow. Where Anya went, River needed to be. Priya watched this, her earlier doubts softening into a cautious wonder. She saw the way her daughter would calmly say, "It's just the microwave, River. See? Beep, beep, all done." And the dog would slowly unclench, his muscles relaxing at the sound of her voice. It was Anya's patience that was the real medicine. She never got frustrated. If River got scared, she simply stopped what she was doing and waited, talking softly until he felt safe again. Their walks were the next big challenge. The outside world was a festival of terrifying sounds and sights. At first, just getting the leash on was a struggle. The jingle of the clips made River duck. But Anya would sit with the leash in her lap for 10 minutes, letting him sniff it, showing him it was just a piece of fabric. Their first walk was just 5 steps out the front door, then sitting together on the porch step, watching the world go by. It's just a car. River. It goes vroom, and then it's gone. That's Mr. Henderson's cat. She's grumpy, but she's small. The wind is just playing in the trees. Listen, it sounds like the ocean. She narrated the world for him, breaking its chaos down into small, explainable pieces. And slowly, their 5 steps became 10. Then they made it to the mailbox. Then, one triumphant day, all the way around the block, with River walking tall, his ears perked, listening to the steady stream of her calming commentary. At home, a new pattern emerged. Anya was a quiet child who sometimes found the world a bit loud and overwhelming herself. She could get nervous about reading aloud in class or about big, noisy parties. Priya began to notice something beautiful. When Anya felt her own worries bubbling up, she would sit with River. She would brush his fur with long, slow strokes, or just rest her head against his side. Sometimes I get scared too, she would tell him. Like when I have to do a presentation. My stomach feels funny, like yours does when the thunder comes. Talking to River about her own fears seemed to lessen them. In soothing him, she was soothing herself. And River, in turn, seemed to understand. When Anya's breathing would get quick with worry, he would nudge her hand with his nose or lick her wrist, a rough, gentle reminder that she wasn't alone. They were a team. He was her protector from the garbage trucks and slamming doors, and she was his protector from everything else. One afternoon, Priya was in the kitchen making soup. Anya was in the living room, trying to build a complicated castle out of cardboard boxes for a school project. It was not going well. The tape was sticky, the cardboard kept collapsing, and a crucial tower had just fallen over for the 3rd time. Anya let out a groan of frustration. "It's not working," she said, her voice thick with the threat of tears. From his bed in the corner, River's head shot up. He watched as she kicked at a piece of cardboard. He saw her wipe her eyes angrily. This wasn't the quiet, sad tears from before. This was a storm of frustration. He stood up. He walked over, not to her side this time, but to the fallen tower. He sniffed the crumpled cardboard. Then, to Anya's complete surprise, he carefully picked up a long, flat piece of the box in his mouth. He didn't chew it. He just held it, his tail giving a tentative wag, and brought it over, dropping it in her lap. He looked at her, then at the mess, then back at her, as if to say, "Here, try this piece." Anya stared, her frustration melting into disbelief, then into a giggle that burst out of her. "Are you helping?" River wagged his tail harder, a proud swish against the floor. He didn't know how to build a castle, but he knew she was upset, and he had brought her something. It was his offering. Priya, watching from the doorway with a spoon in her hand, felt her eyes well up. This was no longer a broken dog they were fixing. This was a relationship, deep and true. The dog who was once written off for being unfit for service was performing the most important service of all. He was listening. He was understanding. He was responding to the emotional needs of his person. That night, as Priya tucked Anya into bed, River settled on his own rug beside her. The girl reached down, her hand finding the familiar spot between his ears. "You know, Mama," Anya said, her voice sleepy, They said he failed, but I don't think he did. I think they just asked him to do the wrong job." Priya kissed her forehead, her heart full. Looking at the two of them, a girl who had found her voice and her courage, and the dog who had found his heart, she knew her daughter was right. The real work, it turned out, wasn't about training a dog to be something he wasn't. It was about discovering who he was meant to be all along. And as River let out a contented sigh in his sleep, it was clear he had finally found his place. The bond between the girl and the dog became the quiet rhythm of their home. River was no longer a project. He was family. His anxieties were like old scars, still there, but no longer raw. He could handle the vacuum cleaner if Anya was holding his leash. He would watch the neighbors' kids play from the safety of the living room window, his tail giving a slow, curious wag. He had even learned to play in his own gentle way, nudging a ball across the floor with his nose and looking tremendously pleased with himself. Anya, too, had blossomed. The quiet, watchful girl now had a constant, loyal companion who gave her a quiet confidence. She spoke more at the dinner table, her stories often starting with, "River and I saw today." The world felt less big and noisy with him by her side. Their favorite adventure was a weekly hike on a gentle, wooded trail behind their neighborhood. It was their special place. River, who was still cautious on city sidewalks, became a different dog in the woods. His nose worked overtime, sniffing pine cones and earth, his ears swiveling to catch bird calls instead of car horns. He trotted ahead on the wide path and always circled back to check on Anya, his tongue lolling in a happy pant. It was on one of these sunny, dappled light afternoons that their quiet understanding would face its first real, heart-pounding test. Priya was with them, enjoying the peace. They were about a mile into the loop, a well-traveled path, but quiet that day. River was a few paces ahead, sniffing at a fallen log. Priya, stepping over a tree root, misjudged her footing. Her ankle twisted sideways on a loose stone with a sickening crunch. A sharp cry escaped her lips as she fell, landing hard on the leafy ground. "Mom!" Anya shouted, rushing to her side. Priya's face was white with pain. She tried to put weight on the foot and gasped, sinking back down. "I think it's really bad, honey. I can't stand." Fear, cold and immediate, shot through Anya. They were alone. The nearest house was through thick woods. Her mother's phone was in her pocket, but when Anya fumbled for it, the screen showed the dreaded words, "No service." The peaceful woods suddenly felt vast and threatening. Priya tried to stay calm. "It's okay, sweetie. Maybe you can walk back to the trailhead and flag someone down." But the thought of leaving her mom alone, hurt and unable to move, filled Anya with a panic that must have shown on her face. Her breath started coming in short little puffs. This was a real problem, a scary one, and she didn't know what to do. In her fear, she did what she always did. She looked for River. He had come instantly at Priya's cry. Now he stood over the mother, his body tense, his nose sniffing the injured ankle. He whined softly, looking from Priya's pained face to Anya's terrified one. This was a new kind of trouble. This wasn't a loud noise. This was a quiet, serious wrongness in his family. Anya put a trembling hand on his back. His fur was warm and solid under her fingers. "River," she said, her voice shaky but trying to be clear. "Mom is hurt. We need help." The dog looked deep into her eyes. He seemed to be listening, not just to her words, but to the fear behind them. Then something in him shifted. The anxious dog, the one who hid from thunder, seemed to fade away. In his place stood a creature of pure focus. He gave Priya's face one more gentle nudge, as if checking on her. Then he turned and trotted a few steps down the path, back the way they had come. He stopped, looked over his shoulder at Anya, and gave a single, sharp, meaningful bark. Not a panicked bark. A clear, commanding one. "Come, go with him, Anya," Priya said, hope cutting through her pain. Anya scrambled to her feet. "Lead the way, River." And he did. He didn't run wildly. He moved with a purpose Anya had never seen before. He would trot ahead on the path, then stop and look back, making sure she was following. When the path forked, he chose the correct turn without hesitation, his nose to the ground, retracing their steps with an unerring sense of direction. Anya stumbled behind him, her own fear pushed aside by a growing awe. This was the dog who got confused if she moved his food bowl. Now he was navigating the woods like a scout. They reached the trailhead parking lot. It was empty except for their own car. River didn't pause. He trotted straight to the main gravel road that led to the park ranger's station, a quarter-mile away. He kept checking on Anya, his gaze steady and urgent dot just as they neared the small station. Park ranger was getting into his truck. River broke into a fast trot. He didn't jump or bark wildly. He positioned himself between the ranger and his truck door and let out 3 loud, insistent barks. The ranger turned, surprised. Anya ran up, her words tumbling out. "My mom. She fell in the woods. She can't walk. Her ankle is hurt. We have no signal." The ranger took in the scene, the breathless, tear-streaked girl and the intense, focused German shepherd standing guard beside her. He didn't hesitate. "Show me," he said. "You and your dog hop in." River jumped into the back seat of the truck without a second thought. He stood, paws on the center console, as Anya directed the ranger back to the trail. When they reached the spot, River was out of the truck almost before it stopped, leading the ranger straight through the trees to where Priya lay. The next hour was a blur of first aid, a supportive arm, and a slow, careful walk back to the truck with the ranger supporting Priya. Through it all, River never left her other side. Walking so close, his body was a living crutch for her to lean her hand on. His job wasn't over until Priya was safely in the passenger seat. Her ankle wrapped, and he was settled in the back with Anya, his head in her lap at home, with Priya's ankle iced and propped up. The reality of what had happened settled over them. The ranger had been impressed. "That dog of yours," he'd said. He knew exactly what to do. He didn't panic. He got help. That's something special. Anya hugged River tightly, burying her face in his neck. He licked her ear, then let out a long, deep sigh, the focused intensity finally leaving his body. He was just their River again, but they all knew he was more than that. In the moment of crisis, the dog who was labeled a failure hadn't frozen or run away. He had listened. He had understood the problem, and he had led them to safety. He hadn't performed a trained service task. He had performed an act of love, and it had been more powerful than any command. The little girl who had bought a broken dog had been right all along. He just needed the right person to believe in him. News in a small town has a way of traveling on the wind. The story of the girl, her injured mother, and the dog who went for help didn't need a newspaper. It was told at the grocery store, over garden fences, and in the waiting room at the doctor's office where Priya got her ankle checked. "Did you hear about the Sharma girl and that nervous dog from the auction?" People would say. Turns out he's not so nervous after all. A few days later, a car pulled up in their driveway. A woman in a practical jacket and clean boots got out. Anya, watching from the window, felt a flicker of recognition. It was the trainer from the service dog organization, the one who had been at the auction. Her expression was serious, but not unkind. Priya invited her in, her movements slow with her crutches. River, hearing a stranger's voice, immediately positioned himself between the visitor and Anya, his posture watchful but calm. He didn't hide. He just observed the trainer, whose name was Linda, didn't miss this. She sat down slowly, keeping her voice soft. "I heard what happened out on the trail," she began. "I have to admit, it made me. Well, it made me want to come and see for myself." She looked at River, who was now sitting pressed against Anya's legs, accepting slow strokes from the girl's hand. Linda's expert eyes took in everything: his calm demeanor, his clear bond with Anya, the way his eyes would flick to Priya's propped-up ankle as if checking on it. "May I?" Linda asked, gesturing toward River. Anya nodded. Linda didn't try to pet him. She spoke to him gently, then made a series of simple hand gesture signs for sit, down, stay. River obeyed each one perfectly, his gaze intelligent and focused. His obedience was never the problem, Linda said, more to herself than to them. She sighed, a sound of genuine regret. "We see so many dogs. The program is designed for efficiency, for stability. Dogs that can work in airports, in hospitals, in busy streets." She looked at River, who had returned to Anya's side. He was so sensitive. The louder and more chaotic the training environment became, the more he shut down. We interpreted that as a lack of courage. We labeled him unfit. Seeing him now, I believe we were wrong. Anya's grip on River's fur tightened. "He's not broken." "No," Linda said, her voice firm. "He is not. What you've done here, you didn't train a service dog. You built a partnership. You gave him trust, and in return, he gave you his whole heart. What he did on that trail wasn't a trained behavior. It was intelligent reasoning born from loyalty. That's rarer, and in many ways more valuable." The visit changed something in the air. It was an apology and a validation all at once. It also planted a seed in Priya and Anya's minds. If River's gentle, patient way of being could help him, could it help others? They started small. They began volunteering at the local animal shelter on Saturday mornings. Anya would walk the shyest, most scared dogs, using the same soft voice and endless patience she had with River. River came with them. He would lie calmly on a blanket in the corner of the visiting room. And something amazing happened. The anxious, barking dogs in the kennels would often quiet down when they saw him. A few, when brought into the room, would slowly approach him, drawn by his calm energy. He was like a living, breathing lesson in feeling safe. Then, Anya's school librarian, who had heard the story, had an idea. She started a Pause for Reading program. Once a week, children who were shy or struggling with reading could come and read a book to a calm. Listening dog Dot, of course. The first and best dog for the job was River. The first day, Anya was nervous for him. The library could be echoey. There were kids. But River, wearing a simple blue bandana, walked in beside her with his head high. A little boy, struggling with his stutter, sat down on a cushion beside him. He began to haltingly read a story about a lost puppy. River didn't fidget. He rested his head on the boy's knee, his brown eyes looking up with a quiet, endless patience. He wasn't judging the words. He was just listening. The boy's stuttering slowly eased as he petted the soft fur. He finished the whole book, a proud smile on his face. Watching from a distance, Priya felt tears prick her eyes. This dog, bought for $50 out of pity, was changing their world in ways they never imagined. He had given Anya confidence. He had saved Priya, and now he was helping other children find their voice. One evening, months later, they were all in the backyard. Priya's ankle was healed. Anya was swinging slowly on the old tire swing. River lay in the cool grass, watching a butterfly flit above the dandelions. He was utterly at peace. Anya jumped off the swing and plopped down beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're a good dog, River," she whispered. "The best." He licked her cheek and sighed, a sound of pure contentment. They had started with a simple, heartbreaking goal, to help a sick and scared dog. But they had done so much more. They had learned that true strength isn't about being the loudest or the bravest in a crowd. Sometimes it's the quiet strength of patience. Sometimes the greatest service isn't following a set of commands, but understanding a heart that the little girl at the auction had seen something no one else could see. She hadn't seen a failure. She had seen a friend who was lost. And by leading him home, she had, without even knowing it, found a path for them, both a path of quiet purpose, endless loyalty, and a love that was, in its own gentle way, absolutely astounding.